A few weeks ago, when I realized the reading for this Sunday was the first chapter of the first book of the whole Bible, the book of Genesis, I knew exactly what I wanted to preach on. In the beginning, there was only God and a swirling void, a holy dream. And God created the world. One of our two creation stories, our fundamental how we got here stories. And I knew this would be a wonderful Sunday to preach about wild church and how we're connected with everything else in all of creation in this beautiful web of life. It would be a wild church thing. It would be outside. I knew what I wanted to say. And then a man, somebody's son, somebody's father, somebody's brother, somebody's beloved died because another man knelt on his neck until he couldn't breathe anymore. And so many of my wonderful colleagues preached amazing sermons last week on Pentecost about how we talk about God being the breath of life. And this breath of life was denied to this person. And I didn't have words. I didn't know what to say, so I went with my safe plan of bubbles and Ruah and the breath of God and be the church in the world. And I did that because I wasn't ready to talk yet. I didn't know what to say, and I didn't want to have some kind of inauthentic, I stand against racism, here's my Facebook post, just look how great I am and how anti-racist I am, and then move on to something else. And then I read again the words for this Sunday. And all that keeps standing out for me is the sixth day, when God said, we will create humankind in our image. Male and female, we will create them. We will create humankind in our image. We are the image of God. It doesn't go on to say then, and some people will be rich and some people will be poor, and some people are better than others because they're higher educated, or they have the right skin color, or they control all the weapons. All of us, in the beginning, humankind, all of us together are the image of God. Black and brown and red and yellow and white together are the image of God. And so when any one of those beloved children of God, any one of those souls is oppressed, is violated, is killed, is deprived of the breath of life, we are kneeling on the image of God. And then last night I saw the pictures of Donald Trump, the President of the United States, holding up a Bible. And I read the story of how that picture came to be as an Episcopal church in the States, what we call Anglican in Canada. The associate priest and a student minister and a number of other people were on the front lawn of that church in Washington, D.C., and they were handing out water and medical supplies and food and support to the people on the street who are protesting. They wanted to be there to stand in solidarity with these people whose voices have been oppressed and repressed for so long that they are bursting out in fire, in protest and lament. And they were standing there on the front lawn of their church, supporting these people, when the most powerful man in the world ordered his military to take aim and fire tear gas onto the lawn of that church, to clear away the priest and the members of that congregation and the student and all the people that they were supporting, clear them off out of the lawn so he could stand there for a photo op. And the church condemned it, and the bishop condemned it, and the diocese condemned it. And maybe he thought he was pandering to the people who think God is on our side, put those people right, stop the protesting, get people in their place. But for those of us with eyes to see and ears to hear, we see this book. We see this book and we know this story. That God is on the side of the oppressed. God is on the side of the vulnerable. God is on the side of the violated. God is on the side of the weak. This is a book full of people who lament, how long, God, how long before you will hear our cries? And God says, I hear you. I hear you. I send my prophets to you. Jesus didn't come to the temple. Jesus didn't come to the palace. Jesus didn't go to Rome or Babylon or Egypt or one of the places of power. Jesus went to the poor and the marginalized and the exploited and the ones who were crying, how long, O God? And empire stood there with a powerful church at its side and crucified Jesus. They did the worst that empire can do, and God brought new life. That's the message of this book. That is the message of that book. So if Donald Trump thought he was rallying people to his side by standing there on a church lawn holding up our holy scripture, he obviously hasn't read it. Anybody who thinks that God is on the side of the powerful needs to read it again. Needs to read it again. This is the book that the slaves turned to when they were making their way to freedom. This is the book Martin Luther King, a Baptist pastor, quoted 50 years ago in the fight for freedom and equality. This is the book of liberation. It is not a book of oppression. And so I had to preach this sermon. I had to say something because I can't stay silent. I can't stay silent. I know that I am a person whose life has been privileged in so many ways, but mostly because of the color of my skin. And I like to think that I have stood up at important times. I like to think that I am somebody who I will not tolerate racism in my presence. I will teach my children. I'm trying to explain to my 8-year-old what's going on. And I said that people were treating other people so horribly because of their skin color. And she said, why? And I couldn't answer. Best I came up with is there's something wrong inside their brains. I like to think that I do what I can. But for me to sit around and feel bad about myself, or to feel that I need a pat on the head or a pat on the back from my friends of color because I'm one of the good ones, that makes it all about me. That makes it all about me, and it is not about me. It is about people like me who need to get up and use the voice that is heard and make space and then get out of the way so the voices that aren't heard can speak. I have friends and colleagues who have written and spoken so eloquently. One of them, Reverend Michael Blair, the man who married us, who wrote that he can't breathe when people are expecting him to make it all right. I've heard my colleagues and friends of color during Black History Month say everybody wants to hear from us from February 1st until February 28th, just to get the token voice out there, and then we don't want to do anything about it. So we have to do something about it. We can't just be a token. And we can't sit here all smug in Canada saying, oh, well, that's the States. It doesn't happen here. It does happen here. Well, I teach my little white girls that they get to go to the police. If they're in trouble, they can turn to the people in power to help them. I have beloved friends who had to teach their little brown boy how to be quiet and calm and stay out of the way because of nothing more than the color of his skin and the prejudice of the people in power. We have to acknowledge those of us with privilege, we have to acknowledge that privilege. That starts us 15 steps ahead of the race. That I can go into a store and kind of linger and maybe do a little window shopping, look at some clothes, try them on, and not get followed out the door by security. I can drive anywhere I want in a fairly nice car in a really nice neighborhood without the fear of being stopped. Because what are you doing? The color of your skin, you shouldn't be driving here. You must be up to something. So many privileges every day that I don't even know that I have. I'm so blind to acknowledge that. Start by acknowledging that. Start by standing up and speaking out and making space for the voices that don't get heard, and hold them up and stand with the people, because this is our rallying cry. The image of empire holding up the book of freedom and not understanding the power that is here. My friends, I beg of you, figure out what we need to do to make a difference. I was at a conference last summer where Harlan Pruden, who is an Indigenous person, a Two-Spirit person, was leading a panel with some other Indigenous elders, and people were getting up, good-intentioned people who want to make a difference, and saying, what should we do? Tell us what we can do to right some of the wrongs of the residential school legacy. And they looked at this room full of mostly white, good-intentioned people and said, you need to figure that out. You need to figure that out. We are dealing with our own stuff. We can't take care of you too. So what are we going to do? Those of us with privilege, those of us who are used to being heard, those of us with power of our voice or of our economic status, what are we going to do, my friends, my brothers and sisters, so we hold up the cry of how long, O God, and work toward the restoration. We are the image of God. It starts off. This book starts off. We will make them in our image. And that image is not being honored until everyone is being honored. I like to end with a so what and give people things to do. And I'm not sure what it is. But my friends, we need to figure that out. We need to figure that out to be faithful followers of the one who came to free the oppressed and open the eyes of the blinded and liberate and bring peace and justice and equality to those who need it most. May we be those agents of change in restoring the image of God. Thanks be to God. Amen.